The iPad on my workbench dinged at 11:47 p.m., and that single sound destroyed my marriage. I was in the basement of our Victorian house in Millbrook, Maine, putting the finishing touches on a surprise anniversary gift for Elise. 20 years of marriage deserved something special, I figured. The antique jewelry box I'd been restoring for 3 months sat before me, its mahogany surface gleaming under the workshop lights. Tomorrow marked our engagement anniversary. Not the wedding, but the day I'd proposed on the rocky coast outside town. The notification lit up the screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight. The red dress drives me crazy. B." My hand stopped moving. The small brush I'd been using to apply the final coat of lacquer trembled between my fingers. I set it down carefully, the way you handle something fragile when your world is cracking apart. The iPad belonged to both of us, synced to our shared Apple account. Elise must have forgotten that little detail when she started her affair. I scrolled up through the message thread. "Meeting you was the best mistake of my life," she'd written 3 hours ago. "Can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore," came his reply. "Soon, my love. Very soon." My throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. 20 years. 2 decades of building a life together, of thinking I knew the woman sleeping upstairs. The woman who'd kissed me goodbye this morning and said she'd be working late at the marketing firm. I scrolled further back. The messages went on for months. Hotel reservations. Intimate photos I'd never seen her take. Plans for a future that didn't include me. The most recent exchange made my blood freeze. "After the anniversary party tomorrow, I'll tell Jack I want a divorce. We can finally be together. I love you, Elise. Brent loves you more than that construction worker ever could." Brent Rivers. I knew that name. Hotshot tech consultant at her firm, 10 years younger than me, drove a Tesla, wore suits that cost more than I made in a week. I'd met him at company parties, where he'd shake my hand with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. The basement suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I could hear the old house settling around me, the same sounds that had comforted me for 15 years. Now they sounded like a funeral dirge. I took a screenshot of the conversation, then another, then kept going until I had documented everything. My construction background had taught me to plan carefully, to think 3 steps ahead. If Elise wanted to play games, she'd picked the wrong opponent. Upstairs, I heard her car pull into the driveway. The engine shut off, followed by the soft click of her heels on the porch steps. I quickly closed the iPad and arranged my tools as if I'd been working the whole time. "Jack?" Her voice drifted down from the kitchen. "You still up?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Down here," I called back, proud of how normal my voice sounded. "Just finishing your surprise." She appeared at the top of the basement stairs, still wearing her business attire. Even after 20 years, Elise Callahan was a beautiful woman. Auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that had made me fall in love with her when we were both young and stupid, and thought forever meant something. "You've been working so hard on that," she said, descending the stairs. "What is it?" "You'll see tomorrow night, at the party." She reached the bottom step and moved toward me, but stopped when she saw my face. "Are you okay? You look pale." "Just tired. Long day on the Morrison job site." I gestured to the jewelry box. "This thing's been more work than I expected." She moved closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, the expensive stuff she only wore for special occasions, or apparently, for Brent Rivers. "I should get to bed," she said, but her voice carried a strange note. Guilt, maybe. "Big day tomorrow with the party and all." "Yeah. Big day." She kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory gesture, and headed back upstairs. I listened to her footsteps cross the kitchen, then the bedroom floor above. The shower started running. I opened the iPad again and scrolled through more messages. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies, of working late and business trips and girls' nights out. 8 months of me being the fool who brought her coffee in bed and asked about her day and believed every single word. But the messages revealed something else. Elise wasn't just cheating. She was planning. She'd already consulted a divorce lawyer. She'd been moving money into a separate account. She'd been setting me up to lose everything while she rode off into the sunset with her younger man. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter Erin, who lived in Portland. "Looking forward to the party tomorrow, Dad. Mom seems really excited about it." If she only knew. I typed back, "Can't wait to see you, sweetheart. It's going to be a night to remember." That was the truth, at least. Tomorrow night's anniversary party would definitely be memorable, just not in the way anyone expected. I spent the next hour reading through every message, every photo, every plan they'd made for their future together. By the time I finished, something cold and hard had settled in my chest where my heart used to be. Elise wanted to play the long game? Fine. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her opponent. Jack Callahan might just be a construction foreman to her, but I'd built my business from nothing by being smarter than people expected. I knew how to plan, how to execute, and most importantly, how to make sure the foundation was solid before the whole structure came crashing down. The shower upstairs had stopped. I could hear Elise moving around the bedroom, probably getting ready for bed, probably texting Brent one last goodnight message. I looked at the jewelry box I'd spent 3 months restoring. All that work, all that love, for a woman who'd already decided I wasn't worth keeping. I picked up my phone and started making plans. First, I called my buddy Mick at the dockside bar. He answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes and whiskey. "Jack, it's past midnight, brother. Everything okay? Need to meet you tomorrow, before the party. There's something I need to tell you." Sounds serious. It is, and Mick, bring your camera. We might need to document some things. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and started doing research. Brent Rivers had quite the digital footprint. Social media accounts, professional profiles, even a few articles about his disruptive approach to digital marketing. The guy loved attention, loved being seen as successful and important. Perfect. That would make what I had planned so much easier. I spent another hour setting up a few surprises of my own. By the time I finally turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I had the framework of a plan that would give Elise and Brent exactly what they deserved. The bedroom was dark when I slipped inside. Elise was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her phone lay on the nightstand, probably full of messages I'd never seen. I got undressed quietly and slid into bed beside the woman who'd been lying to me for 8 months. She didn't stir when the mattress shifted under my weight. "Sleep well, sweetheart," I whispered into the darkness. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." She had no idea just how big. I woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, the way I had every day for the past 20 years. Construction work teaches you discipline, and old habits die hard. What was new was the complete absence of the crushing weight that usually sat on my chest when I thought about Elise's recent distance, her late nights, her distracted smiles. Now I knew why she'd been distant, and knowing, somehow, made everything clearer. Elise was still asleep, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like she was posing for a magazine. Even after everything, she was beautiful. It just didn't matter anymore. I showered, dressed, and headed downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen felt different now, not like home, but like a stage set for a play I hadn't known I was performing in. How many mornings had I stood here, making breakfast for a woman who was already planning her exit strategy? My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. "Meet at the diner at 8. Coffee's on me." "See you there," I typed back. Elise appeared in the kitchen at 7:30, looking refreshed and radiant. She wore a silk blouse and tailored pants that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her makeup was perfect, her smile bright and warm. "Morning, handsome," she said, kissing my cheek. "You're up early for a Saturday." Couldn't sleep. Too excited about tonight. She poured herself coffee from the pot I'd made, adding the exact amount of cream she'd used for 20 years. Some habits never change, even when everything else does. "I have to run into the office for a few hours," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Last-minute crisis with the Henderson account. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I'd checked Brent Rivers' social media at 5 a.m. He'd posted a photo from some trendy Portland restaurant at midnight, captioned "Late-Night Strategy Session." The timestamp matched perfectly with when Elise had come home. "Of course," I said. "Work always comes first with you." Something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance that I'd made the comment at all, but she covered it with another bright smile. "I'll be back by 3 to get ready for the party. Mrs. Henderson specifically requested that I handle her account personally, and you know how important this client is to the firm." Mrs. Henderson was 73 years old and lived in a nursing home in Bangor. I knew because I'd done some work on the building last year. She wasn't requesting anything from anybody. "Sure thing, sweetheart. I'll probably spend the morning with Mick, then come back and set up for tonight." Elise nodded, already distracted by her phone. "Sounds perfect. Oh, and Jack, thank you. For the party, for the surprise, for everything. You're a good man." The words hit me like a physical blow. 20 years of marriage, and she was thanking me like I was a helpful stranger. Like I was someone she was about to leave behind without a second thought. "You're welcome," I managed. She grabbed her purse and keys, gave me another quick kiss, and headed for the door. I watched through the kitchen window as she backed out of the driveway in her BMW, probably already texting Brent about their morning plans. I finished my coffee, grabbed my jacket, and drove to Murphy's Diner on Main Street. The place had been serving the same menu for 40 years, and it showed. Cracked vinyl booths, a coffee-stained counter, and the kind of atmosphere that made you want to tell the truth, even when it hurt. Mick was already there, sitting in our usual booth in the back corner. Mickey Sullivan was my oldest friend in Millbrook, a former Marine who'd bought the dockside bar with his disability settlement and turned it into the town's unofficial information exchange. If you wanted to know who was sleeping with whom, who was behind on their mortgage, or which city councilman was taking bribes, Mick was your guy. He looked up when I approached, and his expression immediately shifted from casual greeting to concern. "Jesus, Jack. You look like hell." "Feel worse than I look." I slid into the booth across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." "What's going on? You sounded weird on the phone last night." The waitress came over, Dolores, who'd been working here since I was in high school. She poured coffee without being asked and left us alone. I pulled out my phone and showed Mick the screenshots I'd taken of Elise's messages. His face went through several expressions as he read surprise, anger, disgust, and finally, cold fury. "That cheating bitch," he said quietly. "How long?" 8 months, near as I can tell. Maybe longer. "And tonight's your anniversary party." "Yep, 50 people coming to celebrate 20 years of marriage, including him." Mick looked up from the phone. "Brent Rivers is coming to your party?" Elise insisted, said it would be good for business to have some of her colleagues there. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Guess she wanted him to see her playing the happy wife one last time before she pulls the trigger. "So, what are you going to do?" That was the question I'd been asking myself all morning. The smart thing would be to confront Elise privately, maybe try counseling, see if we could work things out. The reasonable thing would be to file for divorce and try to protect my assets. But I wasn't feeling smart or reasonable. I was feeling like a man who'd been played for a fool by someone he'd trusted with his life. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve," I said, "and I need your help." Mick leaned forward. What do you need? I spent the next 20 minutes laying out my plan. It wasn't complicated, but it required precise timing and a few key pieces of information that only someone with Mick's connections could provide. You sure about this? He asked when I finished. Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. She made that decision 8 months ago. I'm just evening the score. Mick nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this smart. No violence, nothing that gets us arrested. Just good old-fashioned public humiliation. Agreed. Can you get what I need? Give me 2 hours. But Jack, you might want to call Erin. If this goes the way you're planning, she should hear it from you first. He was right. My daughter deserved to know what was happening before it became town gossip. I'd been dreading that conversation, but it had to happen. After Mick left, I drove to the hardware store and picked up a few supplies. Then I stopped by the electronics shop and had a conversation with Tommy Chen, who ran the place and knew more about surveillance equipment than the FBI. You sure about this, Mr. Callahan? Tommy asked as he rang up my purchases. This is some serious stuff. I'm sure. And Tommy? If anyone asks, we never had this conversation. What conversation? By noon, I was back home with everything I needed. Elise's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was still working with Brent. Perfect. I spent the afternoon setting up my surprises. The house had a smart home system that Elise had insisted on installing last year. She'd said it would make our lives easier, help us stay connected, even when we were apart. She had no idea how right she was. At 3 o'clock sharp, Elise's BMW pulled into the driveway. I was in the kitchen, arranging flowers and pretending to be the devoted husband preparing for his anniversary celebration. She came through the door looking flushed and happy, her hair slightly mussed despite her obvious attempts to fix it. Her lipstick had been reapplied, but I could see the telltale signs of someone who'd been doing more than discussing marketing strategies. How was work? I asked. Productive. Very productive. Mrs. Henderson is quite demanding, but I think we made some real progress. The lies came so easily to her. I wondered how long she'd been this good at deception, or if it was a skill she'd developed specifically for her affair with Brent. I'm going to shower and get ready, she said. What time do people start arriving? 7 o'clock, but I thought we might have a drink first, just the two of us, like old times. She smiled, and for just a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. That sounds lovely. 2 hours later, I was standing in our living room, watching my wife put the finishing touches on what would be the last party we ever hosted together. She wore a black cocktail dress that hugged her figure perfectly, her hair swept up in an elegant style that showed off the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She looked like a woman who had everything she wanted. She had no idea that in 3 hours, her entire world would come crashing down. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Our first guests had arrived, and the show was about to begin. The party was perfect, exactly the kind of elegant gathering Elise loved to host. Our Victorian house was made for entertaining, with its spacious rooms, high ceilings, and period details that photographed beautifully for social media. Elise had spent weeks planning every detail, from the catered appetizers to the playlist that mixed classical music with contemporary hits. What she didn't know was that I'd added a few details of my own. By 7:30, the house was full of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Mrs. Penfield from next door held court by the fireplace, sharing gossip with anyone who'd listen. My foreman Danny and his wife chatted with Elise's book club friends near the bar I'd set up in the dining room. Everything looked normal, festive, celebratory. Then Brent Rivers arrived. He walked through our front door like he owned the place, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my truck. Tall, lean, with the kind of artificially white smile that screamed expensive dentistry, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd never done a day of real work in his life. "Jack!" He extended his hand with practiced enthusiasm. Thanks so much for including me tonight. Elise speaks about you constantly. I'll bet she does, I thought, but I shook his hand and smiled. Wouldn't be the same without you, Brent. Elise values your professional relationship so highly. Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty maybe, or the first hint that tonight might not go exactly as planned. But he recovered quickly. She's an incredible woman. You're a lucky man. I know exactly how lucky I am. Elise appeared at my elbow, radiant in her black dress. She kissed my cheek and slipped her arm through mine, playing the role of devoted wife to perfection. Brent, I'm so glad you could make it. Her voice was warm but carefully modulated, the tone of a professional colleague rather than a lover. Have you met everyone? Let me introduce you around. I watched her lead him into the crowd, noting how carefully they maintained their distance, how they avoided eye contact, how they performed the elaborate dance of two people pretending not to be sleeping together. They were good at it. They'd had 8 months of practice. My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. In position. You ready? I typed back, give me 20 minutes. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I made small talk with guests, accepted congratulations on 20 years of marriage, and played the role of happy husband while my wife and her lover circulated through our living room like actors in a play. At 8:15, I tapped a knife against my wine glass and called for attention. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment, I said, raising my voice over the conversation. The room gradually quieted, faces turning toward me with expectant smiles. 20 years ago tonight, I asked this beautiful woman to marry me, I began, looking directly at Elise. She beamed at me, her eyes bright with what looked like genuine affection. It was the best decision I ever made. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Someone called out, "Here, here!" and glasses were raised in salute. Marriage isn't easy, I continued. It takes work, commitment, honesty. It takes two people who are willing to put their relationship first, no matter what temptations might come along. Elise's smile faltered slightly. Across the room, Brent suddenly found his wine glass fascinating. But when you find someone you can trust completely, someone who would never betray that trust. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Well, that's when you know you've found something worth fighting for. I raised my glass. To my wife, Elise. Thank you for 20 years of complete honesty and faithfulness. The room erupted in applause and cheers, glasses clinked, people called out congratulations, and Elise stepped forward to kiss me, her face flushed with what I now recognized as guilt rather than happiness. That was beautiful, she whispered against my ear. I love you too. The words should have meant something. 24 hours ago, they would have meant everything. Now they were just another lie in a long chain of deception. My phone buzzed again. Mick, package delivered. Check your email. I excused myself and stepped into my home office, closing the door behind me. My laptop was already open, and there it was, an email from an anonymous account with a video attachment. The video was crystal clear, shot through the window of Brent's downtown condo just 3 hours earlier. It showed Elise and Brent in an embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The timestamp in the corner confirmed when it was recorded, 2:47 p.m., while Elise was supposedly dealing with Mrs. Henderson's marketing crisis. I forwarded the video to myself from 3 different email accounts, saved copies to 2 thumb drives, and uploaded it to a cloud storage service. Then I returned to the party. The next hour passed in a blur of forced conversation and careful observation. I watched Elise and Brent navigate the social minefield they'd created, saw the way they communicated through glances and subtle gestures, noticed how they both found excuses to step outside for phone calls at different times. They thought they were so clever. They had no idea that every move they made was being documented by cameras I'd installed that afternoon. At 9:30, I made my move. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, once again tapping my glass for attention. I have a special surprise for my wife tonight. Something I've been working on for months. Elise looked puzzled, but pleased. Jack, you didn't have to… Oh, but I did. I moved to the entertainment center and connected my laptop to the large-screen TV mounted on the wall. This is a little video montage I put together, 20 years of memories. The screen flickered to life, showing photos from our wedding day. Young faces, bright smiles, a future full of promise. The crowd made appreciative noises as the slideshow continued through our early years together. Then the photos stopped, and the video from this afternoon began to play. The room fell silent. 50 people watched in stunned horror as Elise and Brent embraced in his condo window, their bodies pressed together in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. Elise's face went white. Jack, what is this? What are you… This is honesty, I said calmly. Something we apparently haven't had in this house for quite some time. Brent stepped forward, his face red with anger and embarrassment. You son of a bitch, you can't… Can't what? Show people the truth? Document what my wife does during her business meetings? The room erupted. Guests began talking at once, some moving toward the door, others pulling out their phones to record the confrontation. Mrs. Penfield looked like Christmas had come early. This would fuel her gossip mill for months. Elise grabbed my arm. Turn it off, please, Jack, just turn it off. Why? Isn't this what you wanted? To be with him? Well, congratulations. Now everyone knows. Brent pushed through the crowd toward me, his face twisted with rage. You bastard, I'll sue you for… He never finished the sentence. My foreman Danny, all 240 pounds of him, stepped into Brent's path like a wall. I don't think so, pretty boy, Danny said quietly. You've done enough damage here tonight. The confrontation lasted another 10 minutes. Elise tried to explain, to minimize, to somehow salvage the situation, but the evidence was undeniable. Brent made threats and accusations, but found himself surrounded by my friends and co-workers who had no sympathy for a man who'd destroy a 20-year marriage. Finally, most of the guests left, filing out with uncomfortable goodbyes and promises to call later. Only a few close friends remained, helping to clean up the debris of what should have been a celebration. Elise stood in our living room, tears streaming down her face, her perfect party dress wrinkled and stained with wine someone had spilled during the chaos. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Since last night. Found your messages on the iPad. She closed her eyes. Jack, I can explain. No need. I heard everything I needed to hear. 8 months of lies, 8 months of planning my humiliation, 8 months of fucking him while I made you coffee in the morning and asked about your day. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? You were going to ask for a divorce tomorrow night, remember? After our anniversary party. Very considerate of you. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What happens now? Now you pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Jack, please, we can work this out. No, we can't. We're done, Elise. Finished. 20 years of marriage, destroyed by 8 months of lies. She started to say something else, but I held up my hand. I'll have divorce papers drawn up on Monday. You can have your lawyer call mine, but right now, I want you out of my sight. An hour later, I watched from the kitchen window as Elise loaded suitcases into her BMW. She'd made several phone calls, probably to Brent, probably arranging somewhere to stay for the night. As she backed out of the driveway for the last time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The anger was still there, the hurt and betrayal, but underneath it all was a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. My phone rang. It was Aaron. Dad? I just got a very strange phone call from Mrs. Penfield. She said something happened at the party? I sank into my kitchen chair and told my daughter everything. She listened without interruption, occasionally making small sounds of sympathy or disgust. I'm sorry, Dad, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's not your fault, sweetheart. And in a way, I'm glad I found out now rather than after she'd cleaned out our bank accounts and disappeared. What can I do? Just be my daughter. That's enough. After we hung up, I sat alone in the kitchen of the house that was now truly mine. The party decorations still hung from the walls, a mockery of celebration in the aftermath of destruction. But I wasn't done yet. Elise and Brent had humiliated me for 8 months, thinking I was too stupid to figure out what was happening. They'd planned to destroy my life while I thanked them for the privilege. Tonight was just the opening act. The real show was about to begin. Sunday morning brought the kind of gray, drizzly weather that matched my mood perfectly. I woke up alone in the bed I'd shared with Elise for 15 years, and for the first time in months, I'd slept through the night without the nagging sense that something was wrong. Now I knew what had been wrong, and I could do something about it. My phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word travels fast in a town like Millbrook, especially when Mrs. Penfield is involved in the information distribution network. I scrolled through the messages, expressions of support from friends, shocked reactions from acquaintances, and 3 increasingly frantic texts from Elise begging me to call her. I deleted those without reading them completely. At 9 a.m., I drove to the dockside bar. Mick opened early on Sundays for the fishermen heading out for the day, and I needed to talk to someone who understood the situation without judgment. The bar was nearly empty, just a couple of guys in their 60s nursing coffee and complaining about the weather. Mick looked up when I walked in, his expression a mixture of concern and satisfaction. "Well, that was quite a party," he said, pouring coffee without being asked. "Just getting started. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected. Turns out the truth really does set you free." Mick leaned against the bar. "So what's next? Divorce lawyer?" "Already called one, meeting with him tomorrow morning." I sipped the coffee, strong and bitter the way I needed it. But that's just the legal stuff. I want them to understand what it feels like to have their lives destroyed by someone they trusted. "Jack, be careful. Revenge has a way of eating people alive. This isn't revenge, it's justice. There's a difference." My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered it, curious. "Jack, it's Brent. We need to talk." The audacity was breathtaking. "I don't think we have anything to discuss. Look, I know you're angry, but what you did last night was completely out of line. You humiliated Elise in front of everyone she knows." She humiliated herself. "I just provided the documentation. This doesn't have to get ugly. We're all adults here. Elise and I, we fell in love. It happens. But destroying her reputation won't change anything." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You think I'm worried about her reputation? Brent, you have no idea what's coming." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You wanted my wife? Congratulations, you can have her, but you're going to pay the full price for her." I hung up and turned off the phone. Mick was watching me with concern. That sounded ominous. Brent Rivers is about to learn that actions have consequences. So is my dear wife. I spent the rest of Sunday planning. By Monday morning, I had a strategy that would systematically dismantle everything Elise and Brent had built while they were busy destroying my marriage. The divorce lawyer was a sharp woman named Patricia Morse, who had a reputation for protecting her clients' interests with ruthless efficiency. Her office overlooked Millbrook's small downtown, and she got straight to business. "I've reviewed the evidence you provided," she said, spreading photos and documents across her desk. "This is about as clear-cut as adultery cases get. In Maine, we have no-fault divorce, but adultery can still affect property division and alimony. I want everything I'm entitled to, and I want her to get as little as possible." "That's understandable. The good news is that you have excellent documentation, and the timing works in your favor. She was clearly planning to file first and catch you off guard." Patricia walked me through the process: asset protection, temporary restraining orders, and the various ways we could make Elise's life legally complicated while staying within the bounds of the law. "There's something else," I said when she finished. "I want to make sure this gets the attention it deserves." "What do you mean?" I explained my plan. Patricia listened without expression, occasionally making notes. "It's all legal," she said finally. "Morally questionable, perhaps, but legal. Are you sure you want to go this route? Once you start down this path, there's no going back." "I'm sure." That afternoon, I put the first phase into motion. I started with Brent's employer, the marketing firm where he and Elise both worked. The company had a strict policy about workplace relationships, especially those involving married employees. A simple, anonymous email with the right attachments would bring that policy into sharp focus. Next, I contacted the local newspaper. The Millbrook Gazette wasn't exactly the New York Times, but it served the community faithfully and had a particular interest in stories involving local business figures. The editor, Tom Bradley, had been in my high school class and owed me a favor from when I'd done some work on his house for cost. "Jack, I heard about what happened at your party," Tom said when I called. "I'm sorry, man. That's rough." "Thanks. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I have a story you might be interested in." By Tuesday, the dominoes started falling. Brent was called into a meeting with HR at his firm. The company's policy was clear. Employees involved in extramarital affairs, especially those that might reflect poorly on the firm's reputation, could face disciplinary action up to and including termination. The video from Saturday night had made its way to his boss's inbox, along with copies of some of the more explicit messages between him and Elise. Elise faced the same meeting an hour later. As the more senior employee, she had more to lose. Her position as senior account manager came with a morals clause in her contract, something she'd probably forgotten about when she started her affair. I knew about these meetings because I'd made friends with Rebecca, the HR director's assistant, when I'd renovated their office building last year. Rebecca had always liked me, and she was appalled by what Elise had done. "They're both on administrative leave pending a full investigation," she told me over coffee at Murphy's Diner. "The company is worried about the publicity. Apparently the story is going to be in this week's paper." "Really? I hadn't heard." Rebecca smiled. "You're a terrible liar, Jack Callahan. But you're also a good man who got screwed over by people who should have known better." The newspaper story ran on Wednesday. It wasn't front-page news, but it was prominently placed in the local section. Local marketing executives face workplace affair investigation. The article was carefully written to avoid libel, but it included enough details to make the situation clear to anyone who read it. More importantly, it included quotes from several party guests describing the shocking revelation at what was supposed to be an anniversary celebration. Mrs. Penfield was quoted extensively, and she didn't hold back. By Thursday, the story had spread beyond Millbrook. The Portland papers picked it up, then the local TV stations. What had started as small-town gossip was becoming a regional scandal. Elise called me repeatedly, but I didn't answer. Her voicemails grew increasingly desperate. "Jack, please, you have to stop this. They're going to fire me. I'll lose everything. The reporters are calling my parents. My sister won't speak to me. Please, just call me back." "I know I hurt you, but this is destroying my life. Isn't that enough?" It wasn't enough. Not even close. On Friday, I received a call that made my entire week worthwhile. "Mr. Callahan, this is James Morrison from Morrison Development. I believe you've done some work for us in the past." Morrison Development was the biggest construction company in the region, and they'd been trying to recruit me for years. I'd always turned them down out of loyalty to my current employer, but circumstances had changed. "I've been following the news about your situation," Morrison continued. "I wanted you to know that we think you've handled yourself with remarkable dignity. We also wanted to renew our offer of employment. We could use someone with your integrity on our team." The offer was generous, a significant raise, better benefits, and the chance to work on larger projects. Most importantly, it was a fresh start, away from the whispers and sideways glances that had become part of daily life in Millbrook. "I'm very interested," I told him. "When can we meet?" That evening, I sat in my empty house and took stock of the situation. In less than a week, I'd gone from betrayed husband to free man with a promising future. Elise and Brent, meanwhile, were facing unemployment, public humiliation, and the collapse of everything they'd built while destroying my marriage. But I still wasn't finished. The final phase of my plan would require patience and perfect timing. Fortunately, I'd learned a lot about both qualities during 20 years of marriage to a woman who'd been planning my destruction for 8 months. My phone rang. It was Aaron. "Dad, I saw the news story. Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. For the first time in months, I know exactly where I stand and what I'm doing. Some people are saying you're being vindictive. Some people spent 8 months lying to my face and planning to steal half my assets. I'm just making sure everyone knows who they really are. What happens next?" I looked around the living room where just 5 days ago, I'd hosted a party to celebrate 20 years of marriage. The decorations were gone now, packed away with all the other remnants of my former life. Next, I start over. But first, I finish what they started.